AITA for canceling my wedding 2 months before the date? My name's Emma, I'm 29, and I'm a pediatric nurse at a hospital in downtown Chicago, which means my default state is a low-grade hum of exhaustion that I've learned to function through. I work 12-hour shifts, I cry in my car more than I'd like to admit, and I have a tattoo on my ribcage of a stethoscope wrapped in lavender that I got after my first code blue. My fiancé Ryan is 32, works in commercial real estate, and has the kind of jawline that still makes me stupid after 4 years together. Or at least, it used to. We got engaged last Christmas. He proposed at the Lincoln Park Zoo lights, got down on one knee in front of the polar bear exhibit, and I cried so hard I couldn't see the ring for 30 seconds. It should have been the happiest moment of my life. And it was, I think. But looking back, I wonder if I was crying because I was happy, or because some part of me already knew that the ring was about to become a collar, and the wedding was about to eat us alive. We set the date for June. An outdoor ceremony at a vineyard in Michigan, 200 guests, the whole production. Ryan wanted the big wedding. He'd been the best man in 3 of his college friends' weddings in the past 2 years, and I think he'd been mentally planning ours since before he met me. He had a Pinterest board before we were officially dating. I found that out later, and it should have been a red flag, but at the time I thought it was cute. Endearing. He wants this as much as I do, I told my sister. Most guys don't care about weddings. He cares. What I didn't understand then was that there was a difference between caring about the wedding and caring about the marriage. And Ryan only knew how to do one of those things. The shift didn't happen all at once. It crept in like a fever, so gradual that I kept telling myself I was imagining the chill. At first, it was exciting. We'd lie in bed with my laptop and scroll through venue photos, and he'd pull me close and say things like, "That's going to be us. That's our beginning." We'd taste cake samples, and he'd wipe frosting off my lip with his thumb, and I'd feel so chosen, so seen. But by February, the wedding had stopped being something we were planning together, and had become something he was directing, with me cast as the lead actress who kept forgetting her lines. It started with the small stuff. He'd spend his lunch breaks on the phone with florists, while I was eating a granola bar between patients. I'd text him about a hard day, a 6-year-old with leukemia who asked me if heaven had nurses, a parent who screamed at me because the cafeteria ran out of chocolate milk, and he'd respond with a link to a wedding band's demo reel. Listen to their acoustic version of Perfect, tell me if it's too cheesy for the first dance. At first, I laughed it off. Wedding brain, I told myself. Everyone gets obsessed. But then the invitations came back from the printer with a typo in my mother's maiden name, and when I mentioned it, barely, just a "Hey, can we get this reprinted?" he snapped. He actually snapped. Do you know how much those cost? Do you know how many hours I spent on the design? Your mom won't even notice. She already noticed, I said quietly. She called me. Well, she can deal with it. We have bigger problems. The caterer just told me they can't source the heirloom tomatoes for the salad course, and the venue coordinator wants to move the ceremony start time 15 minutes earlier because of sunset photos, which means we have to redo the entire timeline. I stared at him. We were sitting at our kitchen table in our apartment in Logan Square, the one we'd shared for 2 years, the one where we'd once spent entire Sundays in bed ordering Thai food and talking about what we'd name our hypothetical kids. Now the table was covered in fabric swatches and vendor contracts, and Ryan was looking at me like I was a logistical inconvenience. Ryan, I said, I just worked a 14-hour shift. I haven't seen you in 3 days because you've been at venue walkthroughs every night. Can we talk about something other than tomatoes? He sighed. That specific sigh, the one that said I was being dramatic, that I didn't understand the pressure he was under, that my job might be physically exhausting, but his was emotionally exhausting because he was carrying the entire wedding on his back. I'm doing this for us. For our future. If I don't stay on top of this, we'll end up with a cookie-cutter hotel ballroom wedding that everyone forgets the next day. Don't you want it to be perfect? Perfect, I repeated. Sure. Yeah, perfect. I went to bed that night while he stayed up reorganizing the seating chart. At 2 a.m., I woke up to the glow of his laptop and the sound of him muttering to himself about table numbers. I reached over and touched his shoulder, just lightly, hoping he'd turn and look at me. Maybe kiss me. Maybe remember that I was a person and not a placeholder in his production. Not now, he said, not looking up. I'm trying to figure out where to put your uncle's new girlfriend, so she doesn't start drama with your aunt. I pulled my hand back. I didn't try again. The physical distance came next. Not dramatically, not like he moved into the guest room or anything. But slowly, quietly, the way a lake recedes from the shore until you look up and realize you're standing on dry land miles from the water. We hadn't slept together in 6 weeks. I want to be precise about that because it matters. 6 weeks. Not because I didn't want to, and not because he was too tired. Because every time I tried to initiate, he was stressed about the deposit deadline, or had a vendor call in 10 minutes, or just wasn't in the headspace. One night, I put on the lingerie I'd bought for our anniversary, black lace, the kind he used to tear off with his teeth, and walked into the living room where he was cross-referencing photographer packages. I stood there for a full minute before he looked up. "Oh," he said. "You look nice." "Is that new?" "Ryan," I said. "It's been a month and a half." "I know, babe, I know. The photographer's portfolio is due tomorrow, and if we don't book him, we'll lose the deposit on the engagement shoot. Can we rain check?" "Rain check," I repeated. "Sure." I went to the bathroom and took off the lingerie. I looked at myself in the mirror, the body he'd once claimed he couldn't keep his hands off of, the body that carried children through fevers and held parents while they cried, and I felt invisible. Not ugly. Just not there. Like I'd been edited out of my own life. I tried to talk to him about it. I really did. I'm not someone who bottles things up. I deal with life and death situations at work, and I've learned that unspoken resentments metastasize. So one Saturday morning in March, I made coffee and sat across from him at the kitchen table, the same table now buried under 3 ring binders labeled ceremony, reception, and attire, and I said, "We need to talk about us." He didn't look up from his phone. He was texting the DJ about do not play lists. "Can it wait?" "I'm trying to make sure he doesn't play any line dances. I told you about my cousin's wedding where the DJ played the cha-cha slide 3 times. It can't wait," I said. And my voice must have carried something different, because he finally looked at me. "Okay," he said, setting his phone down with the careful patience of a man indulging a toddler. "What's up?" "I feel like we're not connecting anymore. Like the wedding has become this wall between us. I come home and you're not here, even when you're sitting right there. We don't talk. We don't touch. I feel like I'm planning a party with my event coordinator instead of building a life with my partner." He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached across the table and took my hand, and for a second, I felt hope. That stupid, traitorous hope that rises up even when you know better. "Emma," he said, his voice soft and reasonable. "I hear you. I do. But we're 4 months out from the biggest day of our lives. Of course things are intense right now. Of course I'm distracted. I'm trying to give you the wedding you deserve." "I don't care about the wedding," I said, and I meant it so deeply it hurt. "I care about us. I care about waking up next to someone who knows what I did today. I care about being touched. I care about not feeling like a prop in your perfect day." His face changed. The softness hardened into something defensive, something wounded in a way that wasn't vulnerable, it was tactical. "A prop? I'm spending $30,000 on a day to honor our love, and I'm treating you like a prop. I didn't say you were doing it on purpose. I'm saying I feel alone. And I'm scared that we're so focused on June 17th that we're going to get there and realize we don't know each other anymore." He let go of my hand. He sat back in his chair and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, not anger, not hurt, but calculation. Like he was deciding which response would get him back to his spreadsheet fastest. "You're stressed," he said finally. "You're working too much. You're not sleeping. I think you're projecting work anxiety onto the wedding." "I'm not projecting. Emma. You deal with dying children. That's not normal stress. Of course you're going to feel disconnected from happy things. But once the wedding happens, once we're on that honeymoon and you can finally breathe, you'll see. This is just a rough patch." "A rough patch," I repeated. "Every couple goes through this during wedding planning. It's literally the most common thing in the world. My buddy Greg and his wife almost broke up 3 times before their wedding. Now they've got a kid and a house in the suburbs. You just have to get through the day. Get through the day. That was his answer. Not, let's go to therapy. Not, tell me what you need. Not, I'm sorry I've been absent. Just, why knuckle it until the cake is cut, and then somehow the magic of matrimony would fix everything we'd broken in the name of celebrating it. I should have ended it right there. I know that now. But I was tired, and I was scared, and I had already put down non-refundable deposits that represented more money than I made in 2 months. So I nodded. I let him hug me. I let him tell me I was just stressed. And I went to work the next day and held a 4-year-old while they got stitches and pretended my chest wasn't caving in. The breaking point, or one of them, because there were several hairline fractures before the actual snap, came in April. We had a catering tasting scheduled for a Saturday afternoon. I'd worked Friday night, a graveyard shift that ended at 7 a.m., and I was running on 3 hours of sleep and a granola bar. Ryan picked me up at the hospital, and I noticed immediately that he was wearing a blazer. To a food tasting. He had a leather portfolio under his arm. What's with the briefcase? I asked, sliding into the passenger seat. It's a portfolio, he corrected. I printed out the menu, the timeline, the dietary restrictions spreadsheet, and a list of questions for the caterer. I also brought a voice recorder so we don't forget anything. I looked at him. Ryan. It's lunch. It's a 200-person plated dinner that costs $85 a head, he said, pulling into traffic. This isn't lunch, Emma. This is the meal people will remember for the rest of our lives. I didn't have the energy to argue. I leaned my head against the window and watched Chicago blur past while he talked about salad courses. The tasting was at a converted warehouse in the West Loop, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs, the kind of place that charges $20 for a piece of toast because the toast has a pedigree. The caterer, a thin woman named Chloe with an undercut and an apron that said, "Eat the rich," walked us through 5 courses while Ryan took notes in his portfolio. He critiqued the reduction on the beef tenderloin. He sent the salmon back because the dill garnish was too aggressive. He spent 20 minutes debating the merits of buttercream versus fondant with a pastry chef while I sat there, still in my scrubs from the night before, smelling faintly of antiseptic and baby formula. At one point, Chloe turned to me and asked, "And what do you think, Emma? It's your wedding too." I opened my mouth to say something, anything, about how the risotto was good, how I liked the lemon notes in the dessert, how I was just grateful to be sitting down. But Ryan answered for me. She's not a foodie like I am. She'll eat whatever. I'm the one with a vision here. Chloe's eyebrows went up. Just a millimeter. But I saw it. I saw the pity in her eyes, and it hit me like a physical blow. This stranger could see what was happening, could see me shrinking in my chair while my fiancé performed his role as groom of the year, and she felt sorry for me. I excused myself to the bathroom. I locked the stall door and I sat on the toilet lid and I cried. Not the pretty, cinematic tears you see in movies. The ugly kind. The kind that makes your face swell and your nose run and your chest hitch. I cried because I realized, sitting in that bathroom that smelled like lavender diffuser oil and artisanal soap, that I didn't want to get married anymore. Not to him. Not like this. I washed my face. I fixed my ponytail. I walked back out and Ryan didn't even look up from his phone. He was emailing Chloe about uplighting options. "Ready?" he said. "We have a venue walkthrough at 4. "Ryan," I said. My voice was steady. It didn't sound like mine. "I want to postpone the wedding." He laughed. He actually laughed, a short, sharp sound like I'd made a joke. "What?" "I want to postpone. Not cancel. Just push it back. 6 months. A year. However long it takes for us to figure out if there's still in us underneath all of this." The laughter died. He looked at me like I'd suggested we set the venue on fire. "You can't be serious." "I am. Emma, we've put down $30,000. The save the dates went out in January. Your dress is being altered. My parents are flying in from Phoenix. You want to postpone because you're stressed about work." "I want to postpone because I don't know who you are anymore," I said, and my voice broke, but I kept going. "Because we haven't had sex in 2 months. Because you know the thread count of the hotel sheets for our honeymoon, but you don't know that I got written up last week for crying in the supply closet. Because I feel like I'm marrying a wedding planner, not a husband. And I'm terrified that if we say those vows in June, I'll be divorced by 30. He went pale. Not sad pale. Angry pale. The blood drained from his face and his jaw tightened, and I saw something in his eyes that I'd been refusing to see for months. He wasn't hurt that I wanted to postpone. He was furious that I was ruining his show. "You're being ridiculous," he said, his voice low and controlled. "You're exhausted. You're not thinking clearly. I'm not going to let you destroy our future because you're having a moment." "A moment?" I whispered. "Yes, a moment. Do you know what people will say? Do you know what this will cost us? Not just financially, socially. Everyone will know. Everyone will talk about how Emma got cold feet. How she couldn't handle the pressure. Is that what you want? I don't care what people say." "You will," he said, and there was something almost threatening in it. "When you're 35 and single and all your friends are married with kids, you'll care. When you realize you threw away a man who loved you enough to plan the perfect day, you'll care. I'm giving you everything, Emma. Everything. And you're throwing it back in my face because you're tired." I stood there in the middle of that warehouse, surrounded by half-eaten cake samples and floral centerpieces, and I felt something shift. Not resolve, not yet. But the first crack in the ice. He'd just told me exactly who he was. He just confirmed that the wedding wasn't about us. It was about him. The perfect groom, the perfect day, the perfect story, and I was a supporting character who'd forgotten her place. "I'm going home," I said. "Emma, don't follow me." I walked out. I took an Uber. I went to our apartment and I packed a bag, not everything, just enough for a few days, and I went to my sister's house in Oak Park. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and didn't ask questions. She just pulled me inside and made me tea and let me sit on her couch in silence for 2 hours. Ryan called. He texted. He sent flowers to my sister's house with a card that said, "I'm sorry you're stressed. Let's get through this together." Not, "I'm sorry I ignored you." Not, "I'm sorry I made you feel alone." Just, "Sorry I was stressed." Like my feelings were a weather system I'd wandered into. I stayed at my sister's for 4 days. I slept. I ate actual meals. I went for walks without my phone buzzing about linen colors. And slowly, the fog started to lift. I started to remember who I was when I wasn't performing the role of Ryan's fiancé. On the 5th day, I called him and asked him to meet me for coffee. Neutral ground. A Starbucks near the hospital where I couldn't cry too loudly. He showed up in a blazer again, like this was a business meeting, and he had his portfolio with him. I think he actually thought I was going to apologize. I think he thought the 4 days apart had been enough to bring me to my senses. "I've been thinking," I said, wrapping my hands around my cup because they wouldn't stop shaking. "About what you said. About getting through the day." He smiled. That confident, handsome smile that had made me fall in love with him in the first place. "Yeah. I don't want to get through the day," I said. "I don't want to white-knuckle my way through our wedding and hope the marriage fixes itself. I don't want to be the woman who stands up there in front of 200 people and promises forever while her stomach is eating itself alive. I don't want to do it, Ryan. Any of it." The smile faltered. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to call off the wedding." He stared at me. The coffee shop around us kept moving, laptops opening, steam wands hissing, a toddler dropping a scone, but Ryan went completely still. "You're not serious." "I am." "You can't. You can't just, Emma. Do you understand what you're doing? The deposits. The dress. The venue. My parents' flights. The embarrassment. You're going to humiliate me in front of everyone we know." "Then I'll humiliate you," I said, and my voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. Because I'd rather be the woman who called off her wedding than the woman who went through with it knowing she was making a mistake. I'd rather be embarrassed at 29 than divorced at 32. I'd rather lose the deposits than lose myself. He leaned forward, and his eyes were wet, but I didn't know if they were tears or manipulation. Probably both. Ryan was good at both. "I love you," he said. "I love you so much. I've been planning this day since I met you. I've been trying to give you the perfect life." "How is that wrong?" "It's not wrong to want a beautiful wedding," I said. "It's wrong to want it more than you want me. It's wrong to treat me like a prop. It's wrong to make me feel like I'm ruining your movie by having feelings. You don't love me, Ryan. You love the idea of us. And I'm done performing for an audience of one. I stood up. He grabbed my wrist, not hard, but enough to stop me. Emma, please, don't do this. We can fix it. We can go to therapy. We can postpone if you really need to. Just don't walk away. I looked down at his hand on my wrist. The hand that used to trace the scar on my collarbone and tell me I was brave. The hand that had spent more time holding vendor contracts than holding me. You had 4 months to fix it, I said. You had 4 months to look up from the spreadsheets and see me. You didn't. That's your choice. This is mine. I pulled away. I walked out of that Starbucks and into the April sunlight, and I didn't cry until I was 3 blocks away. But when I did, they weren't sad tears. They were relief so profound it felt like I'd been holding my breath underwater for 6 months and had finally broken the surface. The aftermath was its own special hell. Calling off a wedding isn't like breaking up, it's a public demolition. You have to tell everyone. You have to eat the deposits. You have to return gifts and cancel reservations and explain yourself over and over to people who are more concerned about their travel plans than your emotional well-being. My mother cried. Not for me, for the embarrassment. Everyone's going to ask what happened, she said over the phone. What do I tell them? Tell them I wasn't happy, I said. Tell them I chose myself. That's not an answer, Emma. That's a bumper sticker. Then tell them whatever you want. I don't care. Ryan's mother called me 3 times. The first time, she begged. The second time, she accused me of cheating. The third time, she told me I'd destroyed her son and that she hoped I could live with myself. I blocked her number. I blocked Ryan's too, eventually, because his texts cycled through the same playlist, begging, then angry, then philosophical, then back to begging. I hope you find what you're looking for, he wrote in his final message. I really do. It was the most human thing he'd said in months, and it came too late. I moved out of our apartment. I found a studio in Edgewater with a view of the lake that I couldn't really afford, but I took it anyway because I needed to see water. I needed to remember that there was something bigger than my grief, something that kept moving even when I felt frozen. The dress went back to the boutique. They kept the deposit, but they let me return the gown, and I watched them zip it into a garment bag and felt nothing. Not loss. Not regret. Just the absence of the panic that had been living in my chest for half a year. I went back to work. I held sick kids. I cried in the supply closet again, but this time it was because a patient went into remission, not because I felt like I was disappearing. My coworkers didn't ask about the wedding. Nurses are good at knowing when not to pry. They just brought me coffee and covered my breaks and let me heal at my own pace. I started therapy. Real therapy, not the couples counseling Ryan had agreed to and then hijacked with seating charts. I learned that I'd been codependent, that I'd mistaken his obsession for passion, that I'd been so desperate to be chosen that I'd let myself be edited out of my own story. I learned that love isn't supposed to feel like a performance review. I learned that wanting your partner to see you isn't asking for too much, it's the bare minimum. Ryan moved to Denver 3 months after the split. I heard it through mutual friends. He'd taken a job there, started over, deleted his Pinterest board. I also heard, about 6 months after that he was engaged again. To a woman named Kelsey. The wedding was at the same vineyard in Michigan. The same photographer. The same color scheme, sage green and dusty rose. The palette he'd chosen before he'd chosen me. I saw a photo someone posted. He was smiling that same smile, holding her hand, standing in the exact spot where he'd once told me our forever would begin. I felt sorry for her. I know that sounds condescending, but it's true. I hoped she was stronger than me. I hoped she spoke up sooner. I hoped she didn't need to nearly drown before she realized the boat had a hole in it. I didn't go to the wedding. Obviously. It's been a year now since I walked out of that Starbucks. I'm 30. I live in the same studio with the lake view. I adopted a cat named Stethoscope, Steth for short, because I have the sense of humor of a tired nurse. I went on a date last month with a guy named David who teaches middle school science and has never planned a wedding in his life. He asked me about my work, and he actually listened to the answer. He texted me the next day to say he hoped I got some sleep after my night shift. It was such a small thing, but it felt revolutionary. Someone seeing me. Just seeing me. I don't know if I'll marry him. I don't know if I'll marry anyone. What I know is that I will never again let a wedding become more important than the relationship it's supposed to celebrate. I will never again let someone tell me that my loneliness is just stress, that my needs are just moments, that my voice is an inconvenience in their production. My sister asked me the other day if I regretted it. If I looked back at the deposits and the dress and the polar bear proposal and wished I'd just gone through with it. I thought about it for a long time. No, I said. I regret that I let it get that far. I regret that I needed to nearly break before I trusted myself. But I don't regret walking away. The wedding was perfect, Ryan. It really was. Every detail was flawless. But I wasn't marrying a wedding. I was marrying a man who'd already left me. And I'd rather be alone than be married to a ghost in a tuxedo. If you're reading this and you're planning a wedding and something in your chest is screaming that the person across from you at the cake tasting feels like a stranger, listen to it. The flowers will wilt. The music will end. The guests will go home. What you're left with is the person holding your hand. Make sure they're actually there. Make sure they see you. Make sure they'd choose you over the centerpieces, over the timeline, over the perfect day. Because the perfect day means nothing if you spend it alone. Which side of that story were you on? Let me know in the comments. And if you love diving into these Reddit rabbit holes with me, subscribe to Reddit Be Mine. We're building the best storytelling community on YouTube, and we'd love to have you. Click that sub button and stay tuned.